So we're going to begin to look at the three options that producers have in the market. They can either earn a profit, a loss, or the shutdown. So to begin with, we're going to look and see what a profit would look like. In this particular example, what we have is we've got a column where we're looking at quantity, and we're seeing at this particular example that quantity can go from 0 to 10. And we find that the price is $1.30 at each individual unit of production. So when I'm going to find revenue, I find price times quantity. So I would take column A times column B to get C. Now it's important to remember that profit is different than total revenue. Profit represents total revenue minus cost. So I've calculated what kind of fixed costs, what kind of variable costs I've had, and I've added the two together to come up with column F here. So I get profit by taking the total revenue minus the total cost. So always remember, not the same. Okay, so in chapter 7 we had briefly discussed what marginal cost was. Now I want to know what marginal revenue is. Now I know that I have gained $131 of revenue at 1 unit, at 2, at 3, 4, and so on. So what I'm going to find is for each additional unit that I produce, marginal revenue will gain $131. So my job when it comes to profit maximization is to figure out where I need to produce, where can I earn the most money. So in a perfectly competitive firm, and any firm structure for that matter besides oligopoly, I'm going to find that the profit maximization is going to be approximately where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. So I'm looking at this particular row here, row 9, where I've got units of production equaling 9, and what I find is that my marginal revenue, let's highlight this guy in red here, is approximately equal to my marginal cost. Now what this means is that is where I profit maximize. It means I earn the most profit at this point. If I produce an additional unit, it's telling me that I will begin to lose profits. So let's look at a second scenario. Let's say that instead of profits that I'm actually earning a loss. So for some particular reason the market is not allocating a price that's high enough for me to gain a profit. Now it could be that I just have too much startup right now and I'm just going to operate there for a loss. We see that companies do this sometimes, especially when there's very high technology involved. So you're going to see that at every level of production, including 0, I have a loss structure. So I'm going to look at my total revenues minus my total costs, and I'm going to see where the loss is the least. Now if I look at 0, you would think that 0 production I would have the least amount of costs, so why not just not produce nothing? Well, in this particular case it actually is a less loss if I produce 6 units of goods instead of 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to produce at 6 units. This is the point where marginal revenue is again equal to marginal cost approximately. Now what this means is that if I want to minimize my loss or maximize my profit, I'm going to operate at a point to where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. So here I've got a fixed cost that's greater than the loss. So this means that I'm going to keep producing. I'm going to operate at a loss in the short run. So the last point of interest is what's known as the shutdown point. So this is the question of when should the firm leave. Alright. So we looked at losses and we had decided that at that point we weren't going to leave the market, we were going to stay in and we were going to operate at a short-term loss. Now what we see is that if I pay attention to total fixed cost, I see that at 0 production, I've got a fixed cost of $100. Now for this particular example, if I keep increasing and increasing my production, what I find is that I continue and continue and continue to gain losses. So as a result of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I'm not going to produce. I'm going to actually exit the market and take a smaller loss than if I was in the market. Now the shutdown point is known as when price is less than the average variable cost at every possible point. So if I look over here at this particular column, what I find is that price is less than average variable cost at every possible unit of production. Now what this tells me is that something's varying. Now what's being varied is how much I'm producing. So if the price is not great enough to cover the cost structure of this, then I should leave. And this is what the shutdown point tells us. So when we're looking at supply curves, we'll see that it will represent only points to where price is greater or equal to the average variable cost.